Hi, in this video I'm going to show you how to make a very standard mug with straight edges. Here's a little picture of what that mug is. Here's an actual mug. After I show you how to make a very standard straight walled mug, then I'll show you how to vary that into something like this or like this. And you make this the exact same way, and then there's just an additional step. The tools to make this mug are as follows. You will need a canvas to lay your clay on to roll it out so it doesn't stick to your tabletop. You'll need a rolling pin to roll your clay out, a carving tool or a tool with a sharp blade to cut your clay. You can bevel the edges by hand or use this bevel edger, a rib to help smooth seams, a modeling tool to blend the seams on the inside you can't reach, a ruler, some slip to help you attach the clay to itself, and a round shape that you can use as a pattern to cut your base. Okay, to get started, you're going to need to roll this clay out into a flat slab of clay. You want the same consistency, thickness throughout the whole thing. I would suggest you go with 1/4 of an inch is a really good thickness to aim for. Once you've rolled out your slab, then you'll need to find something that is round or the shape that your mug is going to be. And in this case, we're just going to do a basic round mug and use that as a template. So this will be your round base for the bottom. Now that you've done the base, you need to create the walls for the base. What I like to do is use the ruler and give myself just a straight edge the length of the clay that I've rolled out. And I have to decide how tall I would like my mug. This mug is just kind of a standard mug, just for comparison, is about 5 inches tall. And that's how tall I'll be making this mug. So I set the ruler up on one side and measure down 5 inches. And then I do that on the other side as well. I measure down 5 inches. And then I can draw my straight line between my two measurements. Or cut my straight line between the two measurements. And I go ahead and cut one side. To figure out how long you need your mug to be, you could do some math and take the diameter of your circle and multiply it by pi. But I like to take a different route, and I make a little tick mark into my circle base, and then I use that to roll along the walls I've created. And then I mark it where that tick mark is. And then I use my ruler for the straight edge to cut it there. Remember, I said a good thickness is about 1/4 of an inch. And it's the same thickness all the way around. Now that you have your base and your wall cut, you need to attach them. In order to attach them, remember, we have to use scoring and slipping methods. So you're going to attach the walls on the outside edge of your base, because that's what you cut the length to be the circumference, so I'm going to score marks on the whole outside edge. And I'm going to score along this bottom. Where that's going to attach. In order to make this a really good seam on the sides where the two clay pieces attach, right here, we're going to use this bevel edge tool to cut a bevel in so that they will fit together. So I just glide this along the side. I use the small end instead of the long end. I want the shorter, smaller end. And when I cut it on one side, if it goes around and attaches to the other side, I need to flip this over and then bevel the other side so that they will fit together correctly. And of course, I'll need to score and slip that. So I go ahead and make my score marks. On both sides. And use slip. And then put it together. Adding that bevel to that seam will decrease having an extra thick part of your mug, so that way the thickness of the clay stays the same the whole way around. It makes for a nicer mug. Once I've gotten that together, I want to support the inside while I blend the seam. You can use that rib to help blend that seam. It's really important, because this mug is going to hold your hot chocolate or your liquid, that you come down to the bottom and really make sure that that seam gets blended as well. You don't want anything to leak through. If you don't like to use the rib, you can also use your finger. Or if you don't have a rib, your finger will work just as well. Again, because this is holding liquid, it's important to make sure you get that seam blended on the inside. If you can't get your finger or rib inside all the way down to the bottom, this modeling tool does a really good job of getting down to the bottom of your piece, and so you can reach down in there with that and use that to help you blend those seams, as well as the seams along the bottom. After you've blended the seams, it's important to think about how this is going to be used, and you're going to be bringing it to your mouth to take a drink of it. It's a little bit awkward if this edge is thick, so what I like to do is either pinch that a little bit thinner, or you can take your rib or a modeling tool or something and kind of scrape that edge a little bit to kind of create an angle on there. You'll see this in commercial mugs that you buy at the store. This is because it allows for a more comfortable use. It's not as awkward to put something that's like this to drink out of instead of something that's thick. So you'll do this all the way around.
If you feel like your mug isn't thick enough to take any off of it, another thing you can do is just pinch.
And there you have your mug, and then we'll do handles. As you're smoothing out the edges and walls of your mug, you may find there's a little bump down here at the bottom. You can use a rim if the clay is soft enough to get rid of that bump. Kind of scraping that off a little bit to kind of match it with the rest of the wall. If your clay is at a leather hard state, you can use a rasp. It looks like a little cheese grater. We didn't talk about this in the tools, but this is a tool that you can use to kind of scrape off or just a little bit of that edge, and that'll kind of match it to the rest of it if you feel like there's a bump there and you need to get rid of it. But if you use this rasp that looks like a cheese grater, it will leave little grooves that you will need to come back and use your finger or a rasp and clean that up. Once you've completed this to your liking, the smoothness, nice and neat, then you can talk about handles. You have lots of different handle options. One of the options is getting some clay and making a coil. Not only do you have options with how you create your handle, but also how you attach it. It can be a coil that you add like this, that you twist up at the top or twist up at the bottom and make it a little bit fancy. You could also take your coil and fold it in half and twist it and make your handle a twist. And then of course you have to score and slip that. Another option that's a very simple option is using the slab that you used to cut your mug in the first place and making a slab handle. Simply you can make a handle that's like rounded like this. You can create a different shape out of it. You can also curl these, you know, make this fancy end if you'd like. You can do it at an angle. And attach this at an angle. Whatever you decide, you still have to score and slip. Make sure that there's room enough for your fingers to fit. And then of course, score and slip. Like a paintbrush, and use this as your handle. It doesn't matter, this is where you have lots of options. As promised, I'm going to show you how to take this plain, straight-sided mug and turn it to something that has a little more variation. This one's like a little rounder on the outside, and this is rounder, it kind of comes in. You can get this same kind of mug by doing the same steps you get to here, and then you just stop before you get your handle on. And I'll show you how to make one of these two. If you have this straight mug, as we talked about, you can take your, as long as your clay is still relatively soft, you can take your hand on the inside and then push out on the edge. On the side, you're pushing out a little bit to kind of create that rounded shape, so then it gets kind of rounded here. And you just do that all the way around. So I rounded that outside. If you wanted to do this one, you can either cut that a little lower, or you can just push out a little bit more, and then you can make little triangle cuts to kind of make that come together. I'll show you that in just a second as well. Right now I'm going for this right here. So in order to get that, then I can just kind of take this and pinch it a little bit on to make that rim just a little bit wider to kind of create that shape. So then you get that more rounded on the sides and a little bit out on the top. Again, if you wanted to go with this shape, like I said, you can just kind of cut this a little bit lower if you want a short squatter mug, or if you wanted to, you can make a slit, a triangle slit, and then score and slip that slit back together.
around it in shape.
The rim comes in. You will need to do this at 4 corners of your mug, directly opposite and then in between those two as well.
You just have to remember to score and slip. The wider you make the triangles, the more small the top is going to be. And of course, you have to make sure that those seams are in fact blended on the inside and the outside. That's to do this step when the balls are still a little soft. And then of course you can have your handle.
All right, and if your clay is a little bit dry and the cracks are kind of there, you can always form take a little skinny piece of soft clay and score and slip. And blend that out. I wanted to also show you quickly this shape mug, which is wider at the top than it is at the bottom. The bottom will have a thinner at the bottom, so the diameter will be smaller. In order to make this, you actually need to make two pieces that are this shape. To get the sizes that you need for that, you have to actually do a little math. In this case, I think to help you make sure that that's right. I always like to make a template for myself when you're making 2 of something that has to be the same size. I like to make a template. So to quickly go through the math, if you have, for example, a 2.5 inch diameter at the bottom, I use the same method I used for the other mug, where I put a little tick mark in the clay. This will be my tick mark in the clay, and then I use that against a ruler this time, and I kind of roll this along until I get to my dimension, which ends up being about 7.5 inches here. So I make my length 7.5 inches. And then I wanted the height to be 3.5 tall, so I make that 3.5 tall. I also need to break this in half, which is actually 3 1/4. inches is this part right here. I need to make 2 of these to go around, so I need to break it in half, so I have 2 of them that will meet up together. And half of 7.5 is 3 1/4. So I go ahead and draw that marking out, and then I just connect my edges from the bottom to the top. And that gives me a shape, very squared off shape like this. In order for those to work out, because this is a circle, you need to kind of cut out a little bit of this, like a semicircle shape here, as well as the top. So then I get something that looks like this as your template. I use that and just cut 2 of those out. Which I've already done. Once those are cut out, then you want to bevel your edges. You want to bevel, because you're putting this piece to this piece. As you're looking at this, this sides need to be beveled, and then the opposite sides of this need to be beveled. And you want to make those score marks. Because I'm kind of eyeballing the shape of this curve here, sometimes you might need to take a little bit off. And I like to do that using a rasp to level that out. In this video, I'll show you how to make a traditional handle. They call it pulling a handle. You just grab some water and clay and slide. Cut this where you want it to be. And this would make a traditional handle.